there is an overemphasis on the constant comparing and grading. It's art, it's not math.
What is your job with TNA?
I take what creative does and translate that to talent and help coordinate all that on headset.
What's something that when you see it happening in the ring, you're going, why are they doing it like that?
Terrible, shitty covers on pin.
People now choreograph the entire match.
What's done now is so much faster and so much complicated, so you have to sit down and put that together.
You dancing. What's the story behind that?
I don't believe it was ever supposed to be a dance gimmick. It's supposed to be like an end zone celebration.
Yes, Lance Storm is back on the show. You can check out the first interview that we did with him right there. It was back in September, but it was over Zoom. And I just feel like Zoom interviews are never the same. So I couldn't turn down the opportunity to sit down with Lance in person. We recorded this in Las Vegas during TNA Hard to Kill weekend. And it was just great to see how his mind operates. Like, it's on a whole other level when it comes to wrestling. So I know that you're going to enjoy this. But if I can be serious for a minute, if you've ever enjoyed any interview we've ever done on the channel, please take a second right now, super kick that subscribe button, and enjoy this conversation with Lance Storm.
You've escaped the cold.
Yes.
That thing you posted on Instagram, where you could only see this much of your face at risk of getting frostbite, I guess?
Yeah. It was minus 42 with the wind chill.
Oh my gosh.
And I had to shovel the driveway because there was snow. So yeah, that's when I pulled out the ninja hood and the toque and everything.
Do you and Brett commiserate about like, hey, we still live in Calgary. It's pretty cold here.
Yeah, no kidding. I don't know why we always stay, but we do.
My sister lives there, and right before I saw your post, she had sent me something, and she's like, it's minus 50 with the wind chill. I'm like, that's crazy. But also in Calgary, it could be like, above freezing, just like that.
Oh yeah, like 4 days ago, it was above freezing. And again, the conversion for the Americans who don't understand Celsius, once you hit minus 40, it's the same. So like minus 50 Celsius would be like closer to minus 60 Fahrenheit. So
that blows people's minds, by the way, that there's a crossover. There's a point where Fahrenheit somehow becomes colder than Celsius.
Well, it's because the degrees of temperature are different sizes, so they have to cross at some point.
The thing that gets me,
Americans can't understand.
There's only 3 countries, I think, that use Fahrenheit, and America's one of them.
Yeah.
And it's the other thing that gets me is like Celsius, 0 is freezing, 100 is boiling. Like, makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like in Fahrenheit, they're like, what should we make freezing? I don't know.
30.
How does 32 sound? Perfect. What should we make boiling? 212? Done. That doesn't make any sense.
Perfect.
I just got a whole bunch of people that hate me now as a result of this.
If they convert Kelvin, at least that makes sense too.
You've gone way over my head here with
that. That's where absolute zero comes from. Because you get to 0 degrees Kelvin, all physical motion stops. So like everything is dead because the molecules stop moving because it's so cold.
You're as wise as you are handsome.
Yeah, I was just,
wow.
I was actually, I'd like to think I'm smarter than
that. When we did our interview, however many months ago that was, I said, if we're ever in the same place at the same time, we got to do it in person. And here we are.
Here we are in Vegas. I almost didn't make it.
Really?
Well, just the flight delays, and I wasn't sure I was going to get out of Calgary.
You are so much more jacked in person than I think people would realize. Like, you're still in ring shape, I feel like.
No.
Really?
No, I'm not in ring shape, no.
What do you mean? I feel like you could still go.
I could still go, but I'm not putting on tights and taking my shirt off in the ring anymore. I'm 54, coming up on 55. But the cosmetic ring shape I am not in. I think I could physically do the other part.
Sure.
But I have high standards I hold myself to.
When was the last time you took a bump?
I would imagine probably at the tapings in Chicago in October. I wouldn't say most tapings, but I would say every taping or two I take a bump for some reason or another to demonstrate something or just because I'm in the ring and I take a bump.
Most people are like, I'm trying to avoid taking bumps at all costs. You're like, yeah, if I'm in here, I might as well.
Well, I'm healthy, so it's never been afraid of bumping.
No, I mean, seriously. I had Jericho on the show last month, and I was telling him how you and I were talking about how, there's the opportunity to have his first and last match against each other. And then he's like, actually, I was talking to Lance about renting out the building where we had our first match and doing it move for move. Is this a possibility? Is this actually going to happen?
Well, you're omitting the next sentence where he said he doesn't want to put an expiry date on his career and actually pick an end point. But it's funny because the building is still there. I actually went to a wrestling show there a few years ago. But I remember Jericho, he was at a concert in Edmonton, and on the drive back, he pulled into Ponoka and went to the building and took a photo up front. And he sent me the photo. And then I was going up to Edmonton a few months later or whatever. I'm like, I'm going to stop in too. And I stopped in with a buddy of mine, and I had the photo that Jericho sent me, and I tried to stand where I would stand if I was beside him, and like stood with my arm out like this. And I'm like, someone's going to Photoshop these two together. And so I sent him the photo of me standing in the same spot. And then I had a bunch of people on the Observer message board do some Photoshops for me to get us put together.
I could have looked this up on Cage Match, but who won that? Who won your first match?
It was a time limit draw.
Oh my goodness.
Terrible booking.
So, I mean, potentially Jericho's last match could be a time limit draw.
If we, because he mentioned about doing the exact same match. And it's funny, we could, because we didn't do anything then that we couldn't do now.
Okay.
But because I thought, that would be really cool. It might even been my suggestion as a joke, but anyone that came would be so disappointed.
Is it not a good match?
Well, it's fine, but we don't do any of the signature stuff that they would want to see.
Sure.
Like, there'd be no code breaker, there'd be no lion tamer, there'd be no half crab, there'd be no super kick. It's like there'd be no Judas like nothing.
And none of it existed.
No.
Yeah. You call it the half crab?
That's all I've ever called it.
It's the Canadian Maple Leaf. Lance, come on.
Nope. Now, I was in WWE. There was a point where they wanted to call it something. And I think it was called on like one show, probably like one Sunday Night Heat match. But they're like, what do we call it? Because at the time, I'm not Canadian. And I come up with the idea of calling it the straight shooter.
That's great.
Because obviously it's not the sharp shooter. Yeah. And I'm, if anything else, I'm a straight shooter. And the fact that you just keep the one leg technically straight side to side, I'm like, call it the straight shooter. And they liked it.
Yeah.
And I think it got called that once.
So it actually did get called that.
I believe there's one Sunday Night Heat match where they referred to it as the straight shooter.
So then how did it become the Canadian Maple Leaf?
Never really did. Like WCW called it that when I was doing, but
that's what I know it as.
I never liked the name, didn't want to call it that. Like, I've never liked gimmick names. I remember when I started in ECW, would have been probably after the first match or two. And Joey Styles pulls me aside and he's like, you have any special names for, the moves and stuff you do? I'm like, no. He's like, well, what do you want me to call that spin kick off the top rope? I'm like, call it a spin kick off the top rope. He's like, what about that thing where you roll back into the half crab? I'm like, call it a rolling half crab. He's like, okay. And he just walked away.
Why don't you like gimmick names?
I just think it's all dumb. Like, I joked with Edge, because I always used to laugh at Edge because he had the execution, the educator, and there was that brief period of time where he was trying to get over a sort of reverse sharpshooter. You start with the sharpshooter, but then you spin him to your belly, but you stay facing him. And he was like trying to come up with, and I joked with, like, just call it the Edgelicious. And he's like, no. I'm like, yes.
But his spear was just called the spear.
Because it's a spear.
It could have been the... Oh, geez. Trying to think on the spot here.
To me, unless you're the one that actually invented the damn thing, then maybe. But it's like having sweet chin music in the last... It's a super kick. Lance. It's like everyone knows what it is.
He tunes up the band. It is not a super kick. It is the sweet chin music.
If you're looking to burn more calories to help with your weight, you gotta check out the infrared sauna blanket from Bond Charge. This has been a game changer for me. You guys know me, I'm all about health, and I've been looking into getting a normal sauna for a long time, but the price really deterred me. We're talking thousands of dollars here. Then I found the infrared sauna blanket from Bond Charge. All of the same benefits of a traditional sauna, but for a fraction of the price. You can burn up to 600 calories in just one session, and sweating helps to flush out all of those heavy metals and other toxins. What's great about the infrared sauna blanket is it's so easy to set up. You do it in less than a minute, it heats up rapidly, And then you just sit there 30 to 40 minutes, you're relaxing, you're reading, you're watching TV, whatever it happens to be, and you're burning calories the whole time. And on top of that, you feel so relaxed and revitalized when you're done. Oh, by the way, the cleanup is super easy. Go check out bondcharge.com/CVV and you'll get 15% off your infrared sauna blanket. That's bondcharge.com/CVV. Use that code CVV to get 15% off. You are going to love the infrared sauna blanket from BondCharge.
It's a super kick.
Yours is like the super duper kick.
Mine is just a very friendly super kick.
That's just because you're a really friendly guy.
Yeah, I was just never comfortable kicking people in the head because I never wanted to hurt anybody. And that's something else too. Like when I broke in, especially with the veterans that I worked with pretty quickly, it's like you were expected to be feather light with everything. It was all about safety and working.
Yeah.
And I think there was a degree of pride in that the faker we can be and still have them think it's real, the better we are. Because we're really fooling them. Like if we really just punch each other and they think we're punching each other, it's like, well, where's the art in that?
Sure.
So it was like, you wouldn't want to dimple the skin touching someone. So I'm like, well, I can't kick people in the head. I might actually hit them. So I had to get really good at it before I was willing to.
And then the story you told on the last episode about kicking brick walls, I feel like there's a bunch of green wrestlers that are doing this now. They're like, if that's how Lance got his super kick to look that good, I guess that's what I'm doing from now on.
I hope so.
I mean, it clearly worked for you.
It certainly did. And it's just getting used to extending the toe if you need a little extra inch and pulling the toe back if you need less.
That's wow. I never even thought about that.
I never hit him with the heel, always with the ball of the foot by the toes, and you just adjust accordingly.
Yeah. So you are ducked out head to toe here in now vintage Impact Wrestling gear, because it's not Impact Wrestling anymore.
Well, I believe, I could be wrong, and I don't know when this is going to air, but we're a day out from the big TNA relaunch at Hard to Kill. I think the television show is still called Impact. I think it's TNA Wrestling is the company, and I think it'll be TNA Hard to Kill, but I believe Thursday nights, Access TV, Fight Network in Canada, I think it's TNA Impact Wrestling, and its Impact is like Raw or SmackDown.
Yeah, so maybe this isn't vintage gear then.
There'd
There'd be a little TNA logo on there, though.
Yeah, I think they need to give me new stuff. That's my job tomorrow. Where's all my free merch?
For people who don't know, what is your job with TNA?
Producer coach is sort of what I would consider it. It used to be an agent job, but they like to call it producer now. So, yeah, I take what creative does and translate that to talent and then help coordinate all that on headset.
Like, walk us through what a run of show would look like. Because I think people hear producer, they go, oh, okay, so Lance is the guy that's behind this match. But what does that actually mean on the day of?
Well, it means more or less depending on the match. This is something that I probably only DM Dave Meltzer, couple times a year with the quit saying that agents put their matches together. That's not what they do. And he just apparently ignores me and keeps saying, well, this guy put that match together. I'm like, that's not what producers do. At least not all of them. I usually also text Brian with a quit saying that. But again, obviously there's a production meeting. I think everybody knows there's a production meeting, and creatives got the run of the show and they run down the show, and each producer is assigned anywhere between 1 and 4 matches, depending on whether someone misses a flight or not. I think 4 is the most I've had. And that's when we had, when we take 2 weeks of TV in one night, you got to do more.
Yeah.
But so you're assigned a match, so they'll go over the match and you take notes of all the things that the creative wants out of it. And if there's specifics on, hey, we want, some kind of plausible deniability of cheating that we can do, I'm like, okay, so then you're responsible for coming up with an idea and you pitch it to creative. If they like it, then, okay, this is the finish we'll do. And then you go to talent and go, hey, you've got this many minutes. This is sort of what we're looking for. And you give them the information that they need. If there's commercial breaks, if there's anything else. And then depending on who the talent is, they'll go put a match together and they'll come back with you and you go over what they've got. And if it fits all the criteria, go great. Make notes with, hey, this would be a good time to have a camera here. This might be good here. Hey, there's a dive over here.
Yeah.
Hey, there's going to be a blind tag here. Someone's getting tripped here. All the things that you want to make sure the cameras catch.
Yeah.
You as the producer has to make notes and know that, okay, once they kick out of the sweet chin music, I don't know why we kick out of it if it's Sean's, but that after that, they'll be going into a spot where sensational Sherry will jump back a few years, is going to trip Sean's opponent. It's like, okay, when the sweet chin music happens, you got to let the director know. It's like, hey, right side, there's going to be a trip. We need to see Sherry in a minute so that he can tell the cameraman, hey, make sure you're looking at Sherry here. So he'll frame Sherry. The other guy's watching the action, and the director's got to make sure to cut to see what you need.
And you're telling them this as the match is going on?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you're like, okay, now after this, keep an eye out for this next thing.
Yeah, it'll be, there's a trip coming. And again, whether it be left side, right side,
Sure.
whatever, you tell them what side so
Yeah.
that they can let them know. Same thing with dives to make sure that there's a
Yeah.
camera there.
And you're going, they said they were doing it on the left side. They're doing it on the right side.
That happens occasionally.
Does the talent come up to you and say, here's what we're thinking, this. What do you think?
Often.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's where it depends on who talent it is.
Sure.
And that's where too, if it's more complicated, like again, we've got a women's Ultimate X at Hard to Kill.
Yeah.
Those women don't have a lot of experience at Ultimate X. I think it's only the second one that women have ever done.
Yeah.
And I think there's only one or two women in it that were in the other one. So I would imagine those women will want to maybe pick Chris Sabin's brain and go, you've done an Ultimate X a couple of times. You got some ideas. You have, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And similarly with, a lot of tag matches and stuff, especially with the women. Because that's one thing that the women have, they get a bad rap sometimes where if, a tag match, and this isn't just in Impact, it's with everywhere, but it's like up until recently, women never did tag matches. Like if you went to the Trish Stratus era of women's wrestling, it's like she did a bunch of single matches. There was no Rock and Roll Express of women. There's no Midnight Express of women.
Yeah, there were like the 6-pack matches with
Like
the men.
But like,
You know
what I mean? So it's like they've had so much less experience at doing tag matches. So if I'm assigned a women's tag match, I'll be more involved. And again, a lot of times they'll come, hey, we got all these ideas. And I'll be like, yeah, awesome, great. Or I'll be like, okay, but what if, and we change things and pitch ideas. So sometimes I might put 0% of the match together. Sometimes it might be 10, sometimes it might be 50, sometimes, it just depends on what we need. And sometimes if it's really complicated, then it's going to have to be predominantly me because there's too many pieces that the creative wants. And it's like, okay, I got to make sure we dot all these I's and dot all these T's, cross all these T's. So then I do more of it.
Quick time out from this conversation because I need to tell you about Mudwater. If you're a coffee drinker, listen up. Mudwater is a coffee alternative with 4 functional mushrooms and only a fraction of the caffeine of a cup of coffee. You get natural energy without the jitters and without the crash of coffee. There's the ingredients right there on the side of the can. Yeah, no mud in Mudwater. It doesn't taste like mud either. It kind of tastes like cacao and chai came together and had a baby. And the thing I love about it is it's all day energy, so you don't find yourself reaching for that second cup of coffee in the middle of the afternoon. And Mudwater is giving you $20 off when you subscribe at mudwater.com/CVV. They're also gonna throw in a free frother and a free coconut creamer, which is amazing. So go to mudwater.com/CVV. That's MUDWTR.com/CVV to save $20 on your subscription.
What's something that when you see it happening in the ring, not just Impact, but when you're watching wrestling in general, you're going, why are they doing it like that?
I think my biggest pet peeve, and I blame Vince, is what I consider just terrible, shitty covers on pins. That it was a couple of years, actually probably like 5 or 8 years ago, but Vince became obsessed with, you got to hook the leg, you got to hook the leg, you got to hook the leg. And so everyone in WWE started doing this, and then I think everyone just copies because that's what they watch. But I would say 9 out of 10 pins today, The person goes towards the guy's hips and grabs the leg and then rolls his back onto the guy's stomach. And the guy making the pin is staring at the ceiling with no weight above the dude's or female's sternum. And it's like, this pin is terrible. You're not holding the shoulders down. It's a terrible visual. Now, there's a lot fewer of them in Impact, in TNA, because I have been harping on the talent since day one. And it's like, you can still hook the leg, but go to the shoulders. And you can just tell that everyone's thinking leg because the person's laying there in front of them and they go towards the hips first. And it's like, no, pin the shoulders. You can reach back and get the leg.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I harp on people is when you're covering the shoulders, chest to chest, with your head up, we can see your face. Have you ever heard the expression, oh yeah, he always looks at the lights, he's a loser? Everybody making those pins looking at the lights. I'm like, save that for the guy losing. And the one that I usually go and I do a quick Google search, and it's a part of why she got over. But look at the way Rhea Ripley pins people. You know she won.
Yeah.
And you know that she's the boss. She's in charge. She won this match.
It's almost like an Undertaker pin, you know, where like...
Well, she, and again, what's her, I always blank on her name because I think of her old TNA name first, but Selena Vega. She was the one who got ragdolled and pinned, stacked up so many times early on.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, there was the old Road Warrior pin where Hawk could do like the hands together close push-up on the guy's chest with his tongue sticking out. And it's like, that's a great camera shot.
Yeah.
Dude gets over. How many times do you see Hogan counting with his face up? It's like, you want to send the message, especially for a baby face, but for anyone trying to get over, it's like, he's the winner. And if that brings you joy as a fan, it's like, associate that feeling with his face.
Yeah.
Not the top of his head as he's looking at the rafters. I used to joke to all my students in class, I'm like, if you're looking at the ceiling, the only person that can see is Sting, and he ain't up there.
Is wrestling just not enjoyable for you to watch anymore?
I still enjoy some. and it's funny in that it's the same thing if I'm, you know, critiquing a match for someone. I just watch it. And if there isn't anything that doesn't make sense or contradicts or something that just goes against my grain of thought, I'll just enjoy it. But when there is something that's just like, oh, why are you doing that? Then I really stop enjoying it. And there's everybody in wrestling has their specific pet peeves.
I just feel like when you're in it that much, like I can imagine like a movie director, it's probably difficult for them to watch films because they're going, oh, this and this. But they're probably also going, oh, how did they get that shot? Or how did they do this?
Yeah.
There must still be an element of awe.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because that's, again, as part of my job, too, I generally, you know, television show and stuff, watch it back and we'll send talent feedback. And there are times where I'm just like, popped huge for this, you know what I mean?
Hey.
And it's just because they got into whatever they did in a way that I didn't see coming. And it's like, it worked really well. And it's like, that was awesome. And then there'll be the, you know, better covers.
Do you send random messages to your previous students and just go, hey, I caught this thing. You're crushing it.
If I happen to be seeing something of theirs and that jumps out at me, I will. But it's just, there was actually talk about Rhea Ripley. It's funny because one of the guest training gigs I did at the PC one time, Rhea was one of the people that I worked with for a fair bit. So I think we kept in touch a little bit and a few times. And then when she was, did she win the Royal Rumble and then lost to Charlotte the first time? Well, it was the first time that she was, I think I was talking to her when she was going in. Oh, that's right. I was back in WWE and she was going into Mania against Charlotte. And I was talking to her like a week or two out. And I'm like, to me, you should win this.
Yeah, sure.
And I won't tell you what she says because I don't want to risk her getting heat, but I'm like, to me, you should win this. And she's like, I don't know. I'm just going to do what I'm told. And I'm like, and then she didn't. And again, by then I was fired and gone or whatever. So the second time round, again, we don't keep in touch much, but occasionally I'll DM her. And this, was it last year that she had Charlotte again?
Yes.
Yeah.
And won.
But when
Yes.
they announced the match, I just sent her a DM. I'm like, if you don't win this year, I'll have to quit the business. I was like, you got to win this time. She's awesome.
I think Brian Pillman Jr. was like, oh yeah, like every once in a while I'll hear from Lance. And I'm like, that's so cool. The idea to me that someone would travel to Canada to train with you when you had the school, I love that idea. Like the idea, like I think so many people are like, I'm only going to train to be a wrestler if it's convenient, if I can drive there, if I can still work my other job. The idea that people were moving from the States or from Australia or from Europe to train with you and then have gone on to do great things, I think is amazing.
I was surprised because it was just such a different time when I broke in that, it was just wherever. And it was like, and I think there was enough veterans in each territory that you could learn. But I realized when I started school in 2005, there was like, it's really hard now for people to break in because when you first start, you're on the dump show with dumpy workers. So it's like, there's no one to really learn from it. It's hard to get to that small show with decent workers. And it's like, you tend to more often than not work with people in your same experience level, and it's hard.
Yeah.
So I think getting a good education from someone who can give you a degree of psychology and help, because again, when I went to the Heart Camp, which Chris and I did in 90, like we were taught how to execute the moves and holds and how to bump, but it's like, that was it. Like there was no psychology. Like the word heat was never mentioned. The word comeback was never mentioned. The extent of the psychology we're given was, well, if you and I have a match and I'm going over, I'll give you, say, 60% of the match so you get over 2. Wow. I was like, that was it. Because I remember like a year later when I taught the Heart Camp. But
which is also
wild. But, and again, I knew it was absurd. But I knew I would also do as good or better job than the guy that taught us because I had learned about heat and comeback and your basic match formulas. So I'm like, I can at least give them more than I was given.
So how long into it do you feel like you really started to figure out psychology?
As soon as I started working with the Stampede vets.
Okay.
Which thankfully was only a half a dozen, 8 or maybe 8 matches in where, and I actually just recently told this story for a doc that I was interviewed for, but the first veterans I worked with, it was Chris and I against Johnny Smith and Gama Singh. And up until that, it's like, I'm out there calling the matches on the fly as a guy that has no idea what the hell he's doing. And then Gamma and Johnny come over. He's like, yeah, guys, just listen and we'll be fine. And they went away. We're like, okay. And we went out there and they told us everything, what to do while we did it and talked us through it. And
that sounds terrifying though.
Well, at first it was, but think about where, again, when we started, it's like you didn't choreograph. You were often in separate locker rooms. You didn't even talk to the guy. So as a guy with 1 match, 2 match under the belt, going out there with someone you don't know, and you have to think of all of the stuff to call as it's happening, that was terrifying. Like I'm like, beating the guy up. It's like, duck my clothesline and, give me a cross body. And when it kicks out, it's like, watch the clothesline. I clothesline him. And then it's like, I'll beat him up a little bit. It's like, okay, I got to give it back to him. And it's like, I'd send him into the corner, go, put your foot up. And it's like, I'm half in panic mode, just trying to make sure the match keeps going.
Yeah.
So that when it's just like, yeah, just listen. Okay. And I tie up with him. He's like, yeah, push me. And I start pushing him. He goes back to the corner and he spins me. And he's like, yeah, block my punch. Give me a punch. I'm like, okay. And I do that. I'm like, wow. Oh. And then the match, when it was over, I went to Chris. I'm like, we need to learn what they're doing because it was 10 times easier and twice as good.
Wow.
And that's when I started working with Jerry Morrow more after that, where I learned how to call a match and structure a match and learned everything.
What about people that now that like choreograph the entire match, like start to finish? What do you think of that?
It's a double-edged sword in that part of me doesn't like it. Part of me realizes this is what you got to do now. That it's just the situation where the speed of what we do now, or they do now, more than me, because I'm not the one physically doing it. But what's done now is so much faster and so much more complicated that, like, I'm not going to call like a speedball Mike Bailey spot just on the fly. I'd have to sit in a chin lock for 5 minutes to explain it to him. Like, it's just too fast and too many things that you can't, it's a lot more than just gonna be a tackle, drop down, block my hip toss, I'll clothesline you.
Yeah.
So you have to go so much faster. So you have to sit down and put that together. Now, what the really good guys that do that do is you insert places where you can speed it up or slow it down accordingly.
Yeah.
So that if the crowd's more into it, okay, we'll let it breathe here. If they're not, we'll move past it. And you adjust, and you sort of have to have an idea on what this crowd's going to like, put something together that you think they will, and then adjust accordingly for time and crowd reaction. But I actually had a long talk with Mike Bailey about this. Just, it was when he was putting the Osprey match together.
Oh, that was such a great match.
Oh, it really was. But I was,
Man.
I was talking to him about, it's just so funny that, this would not be done. And he brings up, I said, well, how much, did you, the match, he brought up the single match with Edge at SummerSlam. It's like, there was a lot of stuff in that. It's like, how much was that was actually called on the fly? And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. It's just that with that match in particular, I worked with Edge for several weeks on the house shows before it.
Mm-hmm.
So we did 8 similar versions of it over the course of a few weekends. So it's like, 80% of it was stuff we'd done before.
Yeah.
And could call real quick and easy. It's not like we went into SummerSlam and just, I'll talk to you out there, Adam. And we just went out there and called it, because it wouldn't have been anywhere near as good.
Yeah.
And it's just working into the environment that you have to. And it really changed. I don't know if we covered this last time. I remember talking with somebody. But like, to me, the moment that it changed was the Monday Night Wars, when matches started being 5 minutes long.
Yeah. That was a Russo thing. He didn't want matches to extend into commercials.
Well, I think it was more a Russo thing in that he overwrote the show. And when it came time for, he'd write a promo, he'd write all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then there was only 3 minutes left for the match. Because like in WCW, there was so many times where it's like one of the guys in the match would be standing in gorilla still waiting for his music. And they're sending the go-home cue to the guy in the ring to take it home.
Oh, man.
But
Russo was explaining to me that, like, the reason he didn't want matches to go into commercial break is because if we're supposed to believe this is real, we're telling you for the next 3 minutes, nobody's going to win this match, and just enjoy these commercials. And when we come back, they'll still be doing their thing. And I'm like, actually, like, that makes a lot of sense.
no, it doesn't.
Sure it does.
Well, if you watched wrestling before, the 2000s, they would do I'm sorry, this has gone long. We have to take a commercial break. Cameras will be rolling. If a finish happens during the break, we'll show it when you get back. It's a television show. We've got to honor our commercial breaks.
So you're saying with the short matches, that's when everybody was just getting all their stuff
Well,
in?
there was the point of where there was squash matches on television, which obviously you don't even need to choreograph. You just beat the shit out of the guy.
Sure.
And you would take your time and do longer, slower paced match on the road that you could call. And then when you started doing competitive matches on television, you'd have match. But it got to the point where, because you're going to have to, because matches are getting better, it's like, okay, we're going to plan our finish. Here's a comeback, here's your near falls, your finish. It's like, well, that's 3 minutes. Well, once you put your 3 minute finish together and you realize you only have 5, it's like, well, we should probably get a high spot in there. It's like, yeah. And then we'll do this cutoff. And it's like, well, that's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And you've realized you've planned the whole freaking match.
Yeah.
So it's like, if it's only 5 minutes, like I can remember 5 minutes, you might as well just plan it and when it's going that fast.
Yeah.
Because the Monday Night Wars, they were so terrified that if you grabbed a hold or sold for a minute, they'd switch to their channel, see what's going on, that they just wanted you to go fast. And then once that speed expectation was there and guys were learning, and I think that's where the Kurt Angle generation of guys that were trained well on live television, like Kurt wasn't experienced enough to go out and do a 12-minute match on the fly because he was still learning. So
Sure.
It was like, okay, Kurt, we'll do this. He's like, okay. And he'd go out there and he's a machine and incredible. But it's like, and then it just became we plan 5, we can plan 10, we can plan 12. And then they're planning like 45-minute matches.
Yeah. Yeah. If that was like the trademark of that era, what do you think? What's the thing right now? What's the trademark thing of this era that we're in now?
I think it's, and I don't like that it's such a heavy thing. I always, it's one of my pet peeves, but it's like, I think it's strictly match quality.
It's a lot of gifts too.
Well, yeah,
It's a lot of like,
that's a lot of
Mike
the
Bailey,
goal is-
Ospreay. Those are two perfect examples, like gifable moments.
And I think, and this is what I don't like, because I don't think it bodes well for learning. I think there's too many people on the indie scene or trying to get noticed, whatever else, that it's like that's all they're worried about.
Yeah.
We have to come up with this really cool, innovative, creative spot so it'll be gifable. And it's like, well, that's great. And Mike Bailey can have some really cool gifts, but it's like, Mike Bailey's really fucking good.
So good.
You know what I mean? He's a great wrestler that really knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
So he has all the other parts and he does some really cool shit that's gifable.
Yeah.
But if you don't learn the being really good part first,
Yeah.
I think you end up getting more injuries, more danger, and less actual true art form.
Yeah, match quality does seem to be like very much increased. I don't know where that changed, but I feel like we're spoiled.
Well, we are spoiled and there's a lot of it, but I do think that there is an overemphasis on great match. I always yell at Dave for this, and I blame Dave for this. And again, not in a harsh way. We get along great, but it's like, I yell at Brian for it too all the time, but it's they'll pick a match, you know what I mean? Actually, whatever, big, even just Bailey and Ospreay.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is a really great match. It wasn't as good as, and it's just like,
yeah.
I'm like, piss off.
But people do that all the time. Like, oh, I loved this movie. Iron Claw is a perfect example. Iron Claw was great. Was it as good as the wrestler though? Well, they're two different, two completely different things.
But just you know what I mean? It's like there'll be whatever, like Omega and Okada or whatever. They'll have this match that Dave will say is like 10,000 stars, and he'll be like, I don't think it was as good as that match they had 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember saying to Brian just recently, I'm like, imagine if you thought that way about kissing your wife. You know what I mean? You have this great romantic dinner with your wife and go beyond kissing, whatever else. And say, honey, that was really good, but I don't think that was good as, that time 3 years ago.
That's fantastic.
It's like, can you not just live in the moment, enjoy your life?
I don't think wrestling fans can do that.
You know what I mean? And I just think it's horrible for the talent too, because they have to feel it too. It's like, every match Will Ospreay has, it's like, if it's not 7 stars, it's like, oh, that wasn't, it was good, but it wasn't one of, that's another one that, it wasn't match of the year. I'm like, Jesus Christ, is that something that needs to be said?
The crazy thing about Will is I don't even think he realizes how good he is. Like, of course he sees all the 5-star ratings and hears all the accolades that he gets and all the praise he gets. I don't think he realizes how great he is though.
I don't know. I don't know him well. Met him the night he worked, Mike was the first time I met him.
Oh, well, you'll see him again on Sunday.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it like, that's the part of the current wrestling product that I don't like, the constant comparing and grading. And that's one of the things. It's like, it's art. It's not math.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, it's subjective.
And very much so.
Very much so.
Like, I happened to like Josh and Ospreay better than Mike and Ospreay.
Oh, Josh.
I think they were both great.
Josh is fantastic.
And I think it's probably just that I'm a little bit more mat-based ground wrestler, so I have a fondness for Josh.
It's also because he's Canadian.
Yeah. Well, Mike's Canadian.
That's true, yeah. He's from that other part.
But it's just that slightly different flavor. But it's like both were great. But it's like, I'm just so glad that my career was back in a time where no one would admit they read Dave, because I never once ever thought, oh, I wonder what the star rating would be. And it's just, I was always taught you go out and hook the crowd, and if you have them, you have them.
What's the time of your career that you're most proud of? Because, I mean, you worked ECW, WCW, WWE. It's pretty amazing that you did all of that in such a short period of time.
Well, and then like my time in Japan, my time in Europe, like
Oh, I mean, you've done it all.
like there was I wrote my website way back. I wrote 2 articles. One, and because it came off a debate, and it was one was titled "Marks of Distinction," and one was "Distinctions for Marks." And it was the, you know, working Terry Funk was more a distinction for marks. I got to work with Terry Funk.
Yeah.
And I remember there was the one that I thought was a really big thing. I was in Japan working for Tenru, and we had a 6-man tag match, and I was the Gaijin, 5 Japanese guys and me. I believe I was the least experienced of the 6. And Tenru walked into the room and said, "Today, Lance, make match. Everyone else, listen, Lance." And walked out. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm booking this match tonight. And it was just the respect that Tenru had, I guess, for my ability, that it's like, no, Lance is running the show tonight. Everybody listen to him. He's running this match.
Wow.
And it was like, so that was sort of a big step to me to the veteran side of things of, no, I'm putting this stuff together, and I'm from a psychology brain standpoint ahead of the game. And that would have been probably my first agenting.
That's pretty amazing, though, because most people, I don't think, realize when they become a veteran. And like in that exact moment, you're like, well, sink or swim. You're a veteran now.
Yeah. So that was a cool moment.
What's this moment? If people didn't watch it live, you dancing. What's the story behind that?
Well, it's weird in that I don't believe it was ever supposed to be a dance gimmick. There was first they decided, again, I was going to be the boring guy, and we are going to do the thing with Steve, which it's funny too, because wrestling fans are smart, but they're also dumb. Like the amount of people that'd be like, "Oh, I can't believe Steve did that to you." I'm like, Steve didn't like stand up at a catering and go, "God damn it, I hate this match," and brought a pillow. It's like, this was creative.
Yeah.
But that afternoon when we did that, it's like Steve pulls me aside. He's like, "Goddamn kid, they're going to strap the rocket to you. And, if you ever need help on promos and stuff, just let me know." And I'm like, cool. And I'm like, okay, while this boring thing sounds fucking terrible, they're not going to waste Steve Austin on just some stupid shit.
Yeah.
So anyway, they're doing the boring thing, and they decide they'll use gold dust to make me more exciting. And then there was the match. I remember it was me and Rico. And the whole point is that there's a spot in the match where Jackie Gata hops up on the apron to distract her, do whatever. I grab her, kiss her. She takes the big bump, and then we go into the finish, and I win. And I'm to celebrate. And this is sort of my official babyface turn. And Brian Gewirtz tells me, it's like, we just want you to do like an end zone dance, like an Icky shuffle, spike the ball, be excited, and show charisma.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. I think it was Jack Lanza was the agent. And I get down to ringside, and he's like, says here you're supposed to dance. Is that like an Arthur Murray thing? And if the 90% of the people listening to this, watching this, don't know who Arthur Murray is, it was Arthur Murray's school of ballroom dance from like the 60s, maybe the 40s. And I'm like, Jack, it's not a dancing gimmick. It's supposed to be like an end zone celebration. Says here you're supposed to dance.
Oh, no.
I'm like, fuck. So I'm like, yeah, just hang on. I just got to go check on something. And I'm like trying to find Brian. I'm like, Brian. I'm like, is this a dancing gimmick, or am I just supposed to do like an end? And he's like, no, it's just an end zone celebration. Be excited. And I'm like, okay, but Jack's telling me I got to dance. Like, no, it's an end. And then he had to go doing, probably something for The Rock more important than fucking me. And I go back, and Jack's still in the dancing things. I'm just like, I'm just going to try to find a line that Jack thinks I'm dancing enough that he won't give me a hard time and I don't look like an idiot. And then I'm like, okay, when I win, what am I going to do? So I'm like going to find Hurricane, right? I'm like, Hurricane, help me out here. You had 3 count, you kind of danced. I just need something. So it was like Hurricane and one other, she was a PA. I don't remember her name. It drives me nuts. But so they're trying to come up with something, and that's where the Cabbage Patch and I was just like, oh, this is terrible. He's like, whatever. So I win the match and do that. And I come back to the curtain, and Jack's like, you didn't dance very long. And I swear to you, I get to the house shows next weekend, and like on the production sheet, it's like Lance must dance for at minimum, like a minimum of like 45 seconds or something.
No.
I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And then I'm like having to try to do this stupid thing for a longer period of time. And then I don't know if it's the next week or not, but it's like I show up the next week and they've got the new Titantron. Everyone's seen it or heard it. If you haven't, go find it or don't. But it's like I'm backstage and I get Vince is out on the stage. He wants to see you. Okay. So I go out on the stage and it's like, I got this new Titantron for you. It's like, why don't you see it? Okay. So I'm standing beside Vince and they play that thing. And Vince starts grooving. You can tell he's just into it. I'm just beside him going, oh, fuck, I'm dead. Because Vince is just loving it. So he plays like, what do you think, pal? And I'm like, that was really something. And he's like, all right. He says, sorry. He's like, all right, go up there. We're going to hit it again. He's like, show me your dance moves. I want to see your entrance. I didn't even know I was having a new entrance. And now it's like, he wants me to go out there and do this in the empty building with just like talent around ringside. And I'm like, I was just like about to do a pre-tape when they called me out here. I've got another thing I got to do. He's like, all right, but then get back here. I want to see it. And I ran and hid. I'm like, what the like, I didn't know. And it's like, I'm a dance gimmick now.
Wow.
And that's where I'm like, okay, I got to do this entrance. What the hell am I doing?
Man.
And it was just like, how did I get here?
I can't even connect the dots as you're saying this.
And it was just like, okay, and now I'm dancing. And then eventually it, again, because I was no longer boring, that, which at least creative was good. There was then and this is where the angle could have been salvaged. We did a highlight reel. This is leading into Survivor Series. Steve is the sheriff, feuding with Bischoff, who is, I don't know, he's GM or whatever, but Steve's the sheriff. And Jericho's feuding with Steve, and they're going into the Survivor Series. And it's Bischoff's team versus Steve's team. And Jericho brings out me, Test, and Christian for the highlight reel. And whatever crap Steve did to Test to humiliate him or something, and Test's all mad at him. I think that was when he was calling Christian probably the creepy little bastard or something. So, Jay was hot at him. And then Jericho got to me and was like, look at you, you're out here doing this, you're just a song and dance now, blah, blah, blah. And I go, actually, I'm having fun for the first time. I'm kind of glad he did it. And I defend Steve. Jericho and Test and Christian attack me, beat me up. Rob Van Dam comes out, chases them off. Steve makes the match, me and Rob against Jericho and Christian. And I pin Jericho and get a huge babyface reaction.
Yeah.
And I'm told at that point that going into Survivor Series, I'm going to be the last pick for Steve. That it's going to get down to I stood up for Steve standing up for me, and Steve puts me in the Survivor Series match. And this is going to be actually like I'm going to be a fairly pop babyface.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, great.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if it was, I don't know if it was Rob or whether it was Orton, but Sean was doing a program with one of those two. I think it was Orton. I could be wrong. And in the weeks leading up to Survivor Series, they decide that Survivor Series got good buzz, good matches, whatever the hell the other matches were, I don't know. They decide they're going to hold off on the single between Sean and Rob or Orton. And they want to get them on the card. And they hadn't announced the fifth man yet. Sean got the spot. And my angle just went down the toilet and never paid off, never came full circle. And I was doing the Cabbage Patch with Val Venis before no time. Because shortly after that's when they gave me the big penis.
I think fans mistakenly think that Steve Austin bringing out the pillow buries you. Like, oh man, Lance is so boring. I'll never forget that.
It started bad, and thankfully they did adjust it because it hurt Lance Cade for a long time too, and actually started hurting everybody because Jerry Lawler would be like, "Oh, you grab a hold, that's boring," and it's like crowds started chanting boring anytime on a house show someone grabbed a hold.
Yeah,
and there was a oh shit, what have we done here? But again, Vince pulled me into the office with, well, we're trying to get more crowd interaction. He's like, everybody chants, "You suck" at Kurt. No one thinks he actually sucks. It's just something for them to say. We want to see this as that.
Yeah.
Okay. And after that first one with the pillow with Steve, like I went to Vince and I was like, can we not make it more that, make it a shut up and wrestle gimmick where it's like, dude, get off the goddamn microphone. You're boring as shit. Just go out and wrestle us what you're good at.
Sure.
And it started working on house shows because I go to the ring and grab a microphone and start explaining how I'm not boring. I even started reading the definition of boring from the dictionary to explain how it's not, doesn't apply to me at all, which is boring as shit. And then the opponent's music would hit. I'd do the head turn like I did in WCW. The place would pop like crazy, and then we'd go on and have a match. And it was like it was working.
Yeah.
As soon as I told Vince it was working, they changed it. And I was just like, oh, come on. But then again, part of me thinks they were trying to see if I would say no to something.
Really?
I could be off base. But
Sure.
Like Dean Malenko would come for the restaurant. He's like, just to give you the heads up, it's like someone said, wouldn't this be funny if Lance did this? And I'm like, oh, fuck. And it'd be like, I'm dancing. And then the Dean came to me. He's like, yeah, just so you know, he says, someone said something and Vince thought it'd be really funny if it turns out you were a human tripod and had a large hose. And I'm like, where's that going to go?
How do you even end up with Val Venis? Chief Morley, I guess.
But that was, Vince laughed when some writer said something about having me, hung like a horse. But it's like, and he come out and he's like, yeah, Dean, he's like, we decided to put you with Val Venis and we'll do, the porn thing and everything else. And I'm like, they put Val Venis back in the porn because he was Chief Morley for a while. I said, They just put Val back in this gimmick.
Yeah.
They've done nothing with him for 6 months. And now there's going to be 2 of us doing it? Dean's like, yep. I'm like, great.
The good thing is most people don't remember this.
Well, it was booked so poorly that most people don't even realize that my gimmick was I was supposed to have a large penis.
I barely remembered that. I mean, that's if you're gonna have a gimmick.
Another good Vince story.
Pretty good.
I probably because he laughed, he didn't. But it was like when they first pitched it to me, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I went and found Vince. I'm like, "Vince." He's like, "What?" I said, "I thought we just had a meeting a little while ago. You said the wrestling's supposed to be reality based." He says, "It is." I said, "Well, I've been wearing spandex on television for 10 years now. How are we going to convince people now I got a large penis?" It's like, ha, 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 good one, pal. Walked away and still had the gimmick. Just like, but I'm like, I don't know if it was Vince or creative, but it's like I said to him, it's like, where does this go? Like, I can't whip it out and hit somebody with it. It's like, other than saying I have one, where does it go?
I mean, you saw where it went.
Nowhere.
Well, you guys won the championships, tag team champions.
No, that was first.
Oh. All right.
And we didn't actually win them. Regal and I had them, and they just said they're ours now.
Well, that's not how people remember it. Isn't that funny how it works?
Yeah. Although, because I always joke and argue, and I'm joking. I'm not always 100% sure Bubba's joking, Bully Ray. But because he used to get into arguments with Booker about who was the greatest tag team of all and who they beat and everything else. And it's like, I don't know if they were joking, whether they're both serious or whether one of them was serious and ribbing the other. Because again, as an older guy, we beat somebody. I'm like, did you really? But, Bubba with his, you were the 18-time world tag champ or whatever else. Yeah. So when Regal and I did the one-day drop back to the Dudleys and got him back, and I'm like, oh, Bubba, I'm up to 3. And then when Regal got hurt, I was waiting because Val was going to replace him at the Mania match. And I'm like, okay, are they just going to say he's filling in for him or what? But they did a skit or a backstage pre-tape where Val stripped William Regal and I of the titles and awarded the titles to me and Val. And I'm, Bubba, that's 4. I'm like, that counts.
Yeah, they're not real wins, right?
No. I think, did we cover this in the last one?
That.
I think that's funny. Congratulations. Okay.
I think actually a lot about how you're like, I'm not proud for people. I'm happy for them. I think about that all the time now. When I see someone that's like, oh, I'm really proud of you for that. It's like, you reframed my entire thinking on that.
Yeah, and I don't know what, again, it's how my brain works, but I've always just been so reluctant to take more credit than I deserve. And like, if you were to say, oh, I'm really proud of you that you won this title, I'm like, you had nothing to do with it. Why do you get to be proud?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm the one that worked real hard. What the hell did you do?
Yeah.
So I always sort of want to not do that with others and take more credit than deserved. So that's
not only did we learn last time that we went to the same university at a different time, right after we were done, you're like, I think we stayed in the same residence. I think we were in the same dorm.
We did. Yeah, we were.
And then you like sent me a picture. I'm like, yes, that was the one. Willison Hall.
Yep.
That's the one.
Yep.
I was on the opposite wing though. I was in
And you were on the second floor. I was on the
2A,
third.
yeah, 2A North. You were on the third, so you were on the other wing.
Mm-hmm.
What are the odds though?
I had a really weird experience. I just thought of it when you're talking about it. When I first moved into residence, because it was 2 guys to a room.
Yeah.
And I was so lucky. My dude lived in, I don't remember the town now, but it was very close. So he went home on weekends,
Oh, okay.
which saved my sanity because I got the place to myself on weekends. And one of the first weekends he went home, I got late at night a threatening, I'm going to come down there. I'm going to kill you, something or other else. And it's like, I'm right here, motherfucker. Get your fucking ass down here. And it's like, I opened my door and was like screaming into the phone with like, and it was like a big intimidating phone call or whatever. And it's like,
What?
yeah, it was really weird. I remember because we had what the hell do we call them? The more,
The lounge.
no, the senior student. That actually,
like we called them a Don.
yeah.
I don't know what the an RA might be. The
Yeah.
American
But
term.
I went and, told him about it the next day. I'm like, just so you know, in case
Wow.
ever happens. But it's like, yeah, I got a phone call from somebody that said they were going to come down and he was like, I'm not.
So the year that I started, Laurier would guarantee you got residence if you were in first year. They over accepted.
Mhm.
So they had to make triple rooms that year.
Oh my God.
So I had 2 roommates. So we had a bunk bed,
Oh my God.
and then on the other side, a top bunk, and then a desk underneath. I was really fortunate in hindsight. So it was me and my best friend from high school, and then a random third person.
Oh.
My best friend from high school, Mark, ended up still with his high school girlfriend. He went home every weekend.
Ah.
So then I became best friends with the random third guy who's now my best friend still to this day, Steve. But can you imagine that?
No, because those rooms were small.
Oh, so small.
I don't think I would have survived if he didn't go home. And it's weird in that when I moved to Calgary to get into wrestling, there was the Okotoks Inn where they got us a monthly rate you could stay at.
Yeah.
And we got there and it was 2 to a room. And when Jericho showed up, I think I told the story that I was going to quit, and then Jericho was there, and he unfortunately could afford and got a room to himself. So I ended up with this dude, Edvin Barrel. We called him the Toxic Barrel. Gigantic.
What a name.
Heavy guy. But he lived in Drumheller and he went home on weekends because we only trained Monday through Friday. And it was
Yeah.
like those 2 days of sanity because I need my solitude. I just could not handle living with someone in that small of quarters.
When it's as cold as it is in Calgary right now, do you ever think about maybe I could have lived in Florida?
I don't know if I would have picked Florida because I lived there for a year in ECW and didn't actually like it. But
Well, there's also 49 other
yeah, there's a
states.
million
Yeah.
other places, but you have to live where your wife or your significant other wants to be, because when we moved to Florida for that year with ECW, because plane tickets were so expensive for Paul, my wife realized that, okay, we moved to Florida.
Yeah.
She knows me. I know her. We had our daughter with us. And then I went on the road and she was left in a city where she had no friends and no family
Yeah.
and was like, I do not like this.
Yeah.
And it's realized that if you're going to be away and on the road, your family needs to be where they want to be, not where it's convenient for you. Because yeah, like the jet lag, the customs, the longer flights, as well as the weather. Yeah, I'd have been out of there. I don't know where I would have lived, but I would have been out of there if I was single.
Are you in actual Calgary? My
Right.
sister's in Airdrie.
Okay.
So 20 minutes from Calgary?
10 minutes from North Calgary, 35 minutes
Being
from
generous.
me. But yeah, like it's pretty close now. Like
I miss Swiss Chalet.
if she's in Airdrie, she's closer to the Calgary airport than I am.
She is, like, it's very close to the airport.
Yeah.
Swiss Chalet is one of the big things I miss about Canada. Although the one in Calgary is not there anymore. There was, yeah.
I was
that's
never
very
a Swiss Chalet guy.
Oh my gosh, this interview's over now. And I will end it actually with the same question I asked you last time. And I'm sure your answers will change. What are 3 things you're grateful for right now?
Biggest thing, my kids. They both have moved out. My oldest has been gone for a while now.
How old are they?
27 and 23.
You're not supposed to answer that with a question mark at the end.
Well, I gotta do the math in my head and check.
27.
I do that with me because I have to go, because I have a bad habit. My birthday is in April. For some reason, once we roll over into the next year, it's like I'm already 55. But I'm not. I'm 54.
Sure.
But I will catch myself. People ask my age. I'll be telling them I'm 55 and realize it's like, oh, I'm not actually yet.
Not yet,
For some reason, my brain clicks over at January 1st. It's like it's the next year. It's like you've aged already. But seeing them make that step and in a weird way they have their shit together so much more than I did at that age. Like, I did high school and lived at home. Then I went and did university and lived in residence, and then an apartment for a year and a half, or apartment for half, residence for a year. And then I moved back home, got into wrestling, and was like, stayed in a shitty hotel for a while. And it's like, I didn't have a credit card until I was married.
Wow.
I didn't own a car until I was married. It's like I had a duffel bag full of shit living in a motel room as a professional wrestler trying to get my shit together, and when you see your kids and, the oldest owns her own car and owns her own condo. And I'm like, I so didn't have my shit together when I was a single person. And there's so much more together than I ever was.
Yeah.
That, again, it gets into that weird thing where I should probably say I'm very proud of them.
Ooh.
But it also, like, even in that, because obviously with your own kids, you raised them, you were involved, there should be a degree of pride there. But even with that, because I was on the road and my wife did so much more than I did, I don't want to take credit for it because it was so much more my wife than me.
Yeah.
But my kids are really great human beings.
Yeah.
So for that, I'm quite grateful. More than anything else, may have been the same answer as before, but after 2023, I'm very grateful for my health, because I had a few questionable times there in 2023 where I wasn't sure I had my health. Thankfully, all were pretty much false alarms, but so I'm grateful for my health, and I'm very grateful for my job with TNA, to be perfectly honest. I don't know if I've ever had a locker room crew team that ever felt like a 100% group effort in my career as I have with the crew in Impact. From Scott, who, again, there's people above Scott and Anthem, but Scott's the be all and end all as far as TNA goes, to, our announce team, to our guys in the truck, Josh and David and talent and the producers and stuff. It's like, while there is a ladder, it feels like we're all in the same room and we're all pulling towards the same goal. And I don't think I've ever in wrestling had a team as good and on the same page that really, at the end of the day, feels like everyone on the roster bumps fists and goes, great fucking job today, guys.
Yeah, that's great. A pleasure to sit down with you. I'm so glad we got to do this in person.
Yes, it's better than staring at a screen.
I'm not a fan of the Zoom interviews at all.
No, especially because my setup, the camera's never where it's supposed to be, so it's like I always feel like I'm shooting the top of my bald ass head.
You had a great fake gym behind you in our last one. That was good.
There you go.
But no, thank you so much. Thank you for making the time. We had a wonderful breakfast for dinner at Denny's before this, which was great. Just thank you for being who you are.
There you go. Thank you.
Appreciate you.